Thank you, sir. We're back on the podcast grind with Jeremy Vera. He's been on, I think, a couple
episodes
times.
now.
Like 2 out of 5 podcast episodes or something.
Regular. I'm a regular.
Yep, he is. And yeah, we're just wanted to meet up and have another dope conversation. So, just some context. Today is my 3rd day of no food, and
This is a dry fast or what? This is water fast, right?
what does that mean? No, yeah, it's a water fast. But it's interesting. I'm not really drinking water. Like my pee is dark, and cause I don't know. It's like when I'm hungry and I'm cold all the time because I don't eat anything. I'm like, I don't really want water right now, and I feel like the ketosis. Like it's interesting. The fast is like you hit waves of like I can barely move my body type shit. Like I mean, not that, kind of like that, but to like dope ketosis. Where it's, again, like clear energy, I'm like calm, really focused, my mind can do whatever. I'm just kind of good. Like anxiety is basically non-existent. I'm able to like interact with people. I just had like a meeting with this dope place called it's like sort of a Gestalt center that I might do a second internship at. But everything went well. Day 3 is going great. It's the full moon. The full moon is going into Cancer. I'm not sure what that means. Maybe Jeremy
talk about it later.
Yeah, okay.
Later.
But
want to focus on the. I got questions for you about your fast.
Yeah.
Have you done fast before to this length?
I have. Oh, this is a dope story.
Start the story.
Cool. So the last time I did a fast like this, it was actually when I was living at a Zen center in New Mexico. I came up to Boulder to do a meditation retreat at this place called the Rocky Mountain Eco Dharma Center, and it was like a unique style of retreat where it started. The first half was a strict, heavy meditation, and then they send you out into the mountains like alone with like a sleeping bag and some water for 4 days. I mean, they give you food too if you want, but I thought about I'm just gonna.
This was your soulcraft experience.
This was like a soulcraft experience, but I went out with only water, no food for 4 days, and my buddy gave me a quarter of mushrooms that I just had, and I was like, now's probably the time. So I go out in the woods after a few days of meditation.
Classic stuff.
Alone for 4 days, no food. And again, there's no food, there's no phones. I didn't bring anything to read. I'm like all I'm doing is writing and sitting in the woods. I'm like, what the fuck do I do? There's nothing to do. This is just walk around and again, soulcraft. We can get into more soulcraft stuff, but being in nature, especially on these, fasting by itself is a clearly altered state. And then eating a quarter of mushrooms on 4 days of no food. Wow, it was dramatic. It just tripping about as hard as you can imagine on
Great
mushrooms.
choice.
Yeah, and it was honestly at this point in my life, it's too intense. At this point, I mean, I still eat. Anyways.
You do what?
Nothing. I don't eat mushrooms anymore. Just totally. They're actually no. They're like I think they're. Wait, are they legalized yet? Anyways, we'll scrub this. Unless they are actually legalized, then we'll leave it in here. But honestly, I'm just gonna leave it in here regardless. But the last time I fasted was 2021, 4-day fast in the mountains solo, on quarter mushrooms, and that was crazy. It was actually I was living at Zen centers for kind of the year before. Just some context. After I graduated undergrad, I traveled in Asia. This was 2020 as COVID's popping off. Got stuck in an ashram in India for like 4 months. Came back, went to different Zen centers for a while. So it was like this big spiritual, kind of like pilgrimage type situation. And after this soul vision quest experience in the mountains at this retreat, it was just so obvious. It was like, bro, what are you doing? Like, go live your life and go help people. Like, it was such an obvious message where I'm very devoted to spirituality, but it was like, at this point, it seems like my spirituality is moving more in the direction of I have to be in service to others. Because it's like all this freedom, all this liberation, all this insight, it's all for me. And that only gets you so far. And you know that it's interesting, that's almost like the Theravadan Hinayana view of liberation, which is personal liberation, moving into that bodhisattva ideal that's emphasized in Mahayana Buddhism, which is, the bodhisattva ideal is
You're not liberated until everyone is liberated.
Right.
Everyone's collective liberation is the only way.
And for me, I didn't even have that frame. It was just so organic. It was just like, wait, what am I doing?
Do you attribute that to the fast?
It has to, dude. I mean, like, there's so many variables. It was like, I mean,
mushrooms, travel, fast,
camping in nature alone for 4 days.
Right.
Yeah.
But it is interesting that it aligned with this period of your life where you were dedicated to doing a fast. To that you were dedicated to something extreme for this evolution of yourself.
Yeah.
What do you see from that energy in this fast?
Oh, interesting. I love these questions. Move in a little bit more because I don't know how much this
Yeah, okay, so let's
no,
yeah, just
sure,
in case.
Sure, yeah.
Just in case you're reading that question of so that you the alignment of that timing is interesting since we're talking about that now after having done this other fast. And that was a period of your life where you were going through drastic life changing personal evolution and changes. Yeah, what do you think of the through line is? There's similarity between that experience and now your fast here.
That is interesting. I mean, I wondered why I did this fast, and I didn't have actually a clear answer. It was like I felt this lingering sense of anxiety, dukkha, this feeling I want to be somewhere other than where I'm at. This sort of also physically, this kind of heaviness. The past year, I've started eating a lot more meat because our homie John was big into the carnivore diet. So I started a lot more meat. I felt it in my system. So I was like, at one of these days, I gotta just cleanse it. And I see mind body as one thing. You could really simplify it like that. So, and just feeling like a little bit cloudy, foggy, and I was like, I was already dealing with a decent amount of dukkha as far as this uncertainty. Like, what am I doing with my life? I don't know if I want to just be a therapist. Just to context, him and I are in our last year of grad school to be therapists. And therapy's, great. It's better than bussing or, waiting tables or doing construction, which were my other jobs. But at the same time, there's a part of me, the soul part of me, that's like, this can't be it. And sitting with that, there's like a decent amount of dukkha, with, suffering.
This can't be it is a similarity between this fast and the last fast.
Yeah. Actually, the last fast too, I was actually kind of content at the Zen Center, but I was like, I just don't like, there's like almost a subconscious stirring of something that feels like something has to happen. It's almost like you don't know what, you don't know any direction where, but it's like something's gotta move a little bit.
This can happen later on too, but this is a perfect put a tab on this for Hillman kind of alchemical archetypal psychology of that thing within you that's stirring is this archetypal self that needs to be expressed in the world, which is like Burbaean kind of dharma, Rob Burbea, being now that I'm liberated, now what?
Yeah.
Liberation is just step one, which we've talked about in other episodes, so we don't have to get into that.
And the evolution of the soul, and just for context, James Hillman is a depth psychologist, studied under Carl Jung.
Founder of archetypal mythological psychology.
Yeah. And Rob Burbea is a Buddhist Dharma teacher who kind of then took on a lot of aspects of depth psychology and archetypal psychology. So
and powerful overlap between the two, and that is curious how like when you are completely still, even through contentedness, there's still this stirring that kind of wants to be expressed through you.
I love this. So it comes down to this really deep question about what do we want in life. And again, I think in this hedonistic culture, we're taught I want to maximize pleasure and I want to minimize discomfort. That's what a good life is. Leading to more conveniences. I need this cushion of money for security, whatever that even means. But then there's like this soul element where it's like dig deep in your bones and ask the question, what do I want? Is it just the sense of security? And if we look at life, honestly, we can see, what do we mean when we say security? Nothing is really secure. Everything is ebbing and flowing, coming and going, good feelings, bad feelings, people, experiences, whatever, status, identities. So really, comfort, from one perspective, comfort and pleasure can be seen as secondary to fulfilling what is trying to come through you, and that's a feeling I think that everybody has that a lot of people push away, especially in traditional, especially Western Buddhist Dharma. That seems kind of like it missed the mark. There are teachers like Rob Burbea that are different, but it's like opening to getting rid of desire is one flavor of freedom, only one. What about the freedom of becoming
a Maslow style, like becoming who you are meant to be, becoming what you could be.
And that's the thing. If we're too afraid to envision a version of us that's better than we are right now, because anytime we do that, that's gonna hurt. It's like, I want to be there and I'm not. That's dukkha. That is suffering to a degree. But if you open to that, then you open to, I mean, from the Hillman perspective, these images, archetypes, from some perspectives, gods that live in the realm of mind and imagination, opening to them, finding freedom in being of service to them. That's a different flavor of freedom, you know what I mean? And it's
and it reminds me of, if you've started The Soul's Code yet, I don't know.
I haven't gotten it yet.
James Hillman's book, The Soul's Code, references this acorn theory of development as opposed to all these other different psychological, spiritual forms of development, from like fate, determinism, to, you know, the classic, like, you're compensating for your childhood wounds kind of psychological theories. He talks about the acorn theory, which is this naturalistic way of looking at things, which remove this feeling of guilt for wanting to be something other than you are. Think of an acorn is destined to grow into a tree, not because it is the fate of the universe that's like forcing this acorn to grow, but because it's within this acorn's very being that it will eventually become a tree. And you could think of it in reverse. This tree was once an acorn, and so the image of a tree is pulling the development of the acorn forward into the future. You as your current self are this acorn, and so there should be no shame in wanting to be the tree that you're becoming anyway. Whether you are in your own way or out of your own way, you're becoming this tree.
Exactly. I love that analogy. And it actually, I think, for me, it comes down to, honestly, being uncomfortable. When I want to be this tree, when I want to be something other than I am, whatever goal it might be, I want to be, you know, more financially successful. I want to be able to leave my shitty relationship. I want to, you know, whatever you want. I want clout, power. You know, there's no really wrong answers. But if you want something, it hurts if you don't have it right now. Right? So that's dukkha. That's dissatisfaction in the present moment. And a lot of people in this, again, hedonistic culture, it exists in Buddhist Dharma, in some circles, want to push away that struggle of struggling to become that which you know you can be, to achieve that which you know you can achieve, to really push. And I'm wondering in this, because with this view, there seems to be, I'm curious, is there an end to this fulfillment of the image, this fulfillment of who I'm meant to be? Does that end? Or are we destined to almost just continue onward forever? I'm curious what you have to say.
Ooh, that's a great question. Off the bat, I don't think there is an end. I mean, the tree has this finalized, mature image of an adult tree.
Right.
But we know through impermanence that's not stable and solid either. Even though it's like its maybe most fruitful developed form, that's certainly not its final form. The tree withers, the tree dies, the tree will be around hundreds of years longer than us in ways that we maybe subtly can't even tell the difference, but there is an ever-changing nature to everything.
I mean, I almost think from an emptiness perspective, it is what you make it, right? If we make a path with an end, then we can experience that. And it appears to be so.
Right.
But simultaneously, does anything in this place stop? Everything is actively dynamic. You know what I mean?
Right.
This thing is decomposing. My body is, decomposing. Although I am on a fast, so maybe we could say it's regenerating right now. But it doesn't stay still. You know what I mean? Everything is
Your tree is experiencing winter right now.
Yeah. In a good, healthy
The leaves are falling off. You're going inwards.
Yeah.
So that brings it back to the question: what is the final tree image for this acorn right now in the fast that's pulling you forward?
For me?
Yeah. What are the conditions that led to this fast feeling? Besides, you had the explanation already of like you've been having a lot of meat, like naturally kind of like attuned
it's
to
beyond
being a
physical,
cleanse,
sure.
but it's beyond physical, right? It comes at this time of your life where you're examining what and who can I be.
Exactly.
What is this image?
That's exactly it. So again, Jeremy and I are in our last year of grad school. We're both in internship. We're seeing like, oh, what is my life gonna be like? And for me, I mean, this past year I had, mediocre success on Instagram, and I'm like, this could be a doorway into something that is much more fulfilling, much more meaningful, much more aligned with something beyond what I perceive as the sterility of the therapeutic container sometimes. That's almost an image I have of therapy. Is it's too sterile, it doesn't let like soul, spirit, enema flow. I think that's not entirely true, and I'm learning that because I think there are a lot of therapists that are open. I mean, again, it's a very broad statement, but exactly.
But the societal understanding of therapy, that kind of image,
exactly, just sterile,
quite lacking.
Kind of like nerdy white dude and big button up, and kind of sterile. But like, so that threw me off, and I was like, I need. My soul was like, you need to find something. I mean, just more in tune with who you are. It's just not me. And then it's like, and again, that's the image I'm holding now. Is like, how do I do that? And so so that was what built up last year, and then like this winter with the lack of energy that comes with the winter, I'm like starting to feel like, can I do this? Is Instagram the way? Is the YouTube the way? Can I like finesse it in other ways that are more, local, more in front of me? You know what I mean? And that's slowly beginning as well. But it's that discontentedness is like, this can't be it. And from a traditional Dharma perspective, you'd be like, oh, you're caught in samsara. And the question is then, when will it be it? And that's a valid question. And it depends, are you holding the view of traditional Dharma?
Right. Or
the view of more depth psychology, archetypal psychology, where there really is no end. And what I am is more of a servant to image. A servant of, that which is beyond.
Yeah, and so the fasting is so much more of a curious topic, I think, through the psycho-spiritual lens, like we're talking about, versus there's obviously loads of physical benefits, and like anyone could listen to people who are way smarter and more knowledgeable about the physical benefits of fasting than us, though I would encourage them to do that, because the physical benefits of fasting are incredibly awesome and cleansing. Totally. But I'm more curious about like because I myself have done a 3-day fast before, and I've experimented a lot with fasting, and the 3-day fast that I did came at a point in my life similar to you, which was a turning point for me. It was the same question of, who am I truly underneath all the bullshit, lies, and self-deception I've covered myself with egoic ideas of who I should be? Who am I truly? And who could I truly be? What could my life truly look like? And for me, it was a transformative turning point, and I gained a lot of clarity and insight during that time. I thought I had answers that truly were not, but that the answers that I had and the clarity and insight I had during that fast 5 or 6 years ago, for sure, even though I didn't know it would end up here, put me on the direction that led perfectly in like a domino kind of falling way to the point that I'm at now. So that was a pivotal moment in my life to do that fast, and I'm wondering if you have any insights from the last few days that were either intentional or not, or like even like perspective on how you're noticing changes in your life through the last few days.
I love all that. For me, it's, again, there's like something of like, something has to become clear. So the clarity is huge. Again, like the ketosis, if we're going the scientific lens, would be a lot of mental clarity. I feel calm, focused. Some of the time I feel like I'm dying of starvation, but fasting. So and that has really... Oh, my chicken's done. One sec.
Some important things to attend to here.
Yep, the fast ends tonight.
3 days later, that chicken will be incredible.
Oh, yeah, baby. My God, that smells good. So, insights gained from the fast.
Now, are you noticing any difference in how you're approaching like you said, you had an interview with another internship that could make you... I don't know. That calls the things into questions, whether the whole fast is based around that intentionally or not. I'm wondering.
It's interesting. It's interesting. So, insight-wise, I would say being able to see just clearly my place in life right now. Okay, I'm doing all these things right. Like, I'm not failing out of school. I'm gonna get my degree, finish this grad program, finish my internship, be set up to make decent money. That was kind of the goal of the whole grad thing. But Yeah, and getting more clarity on, my relationship with Annie, like kind of where I'm at, where I'm going. It's more of a kind of a zoomed out, clear perspective.
Mm-hmm.
The same energy, like emotional, energetic, beat, like tied up feeling isn't really there because it's like my body's kind of dying, and it's like, and also it's interesting. It feels like I was talking to actually my therapist about this desire for intensity. That I have as far as like I want to do 7-day retreat. Let's eat a shit ton of mushrooms. Let's go up and hike for 5 days in the mountains. Like it's just it's who I've always been. I'm like, why is that?
Mm-hmm.
And there's like some part of me that really desires to see what's possible, to really push it beyond the normal and mundane. Not that ultimately anything's wrong with the mundane, but just my character really does push it. And this fast felt like a way to break things up. Because it was like same shit, week after week, month after month. And this fast, it's intense. It's not crazy. I mean, it's tough at points, but it's like, it's like almost like something to do.
Yeah.
And then,
you're who you are is naturally spicing up life.
Yeah. Spicy. Yeah, it's true. It's true.
And it made me think, which is a whole other conversation we may or may not get to, about like, we've talked about what good therapy is, right? Like how the Hillman stuff can be a really powerful contrast and a better version of this dead image of what therapy is in our culture right now. But it made me think, I wonder how you've discussed this tendency for extremes in your therapy, because I could easily see it being like, let's search for the wound that's causing you to do this and heal the wound underneath this. And I bet your ass there is a wound. And who says that that's a problem? Because that wound has also, through the acorn theory, constructed this unique expression of consciousness that is you, that now adds this flavor to life that's now available to other people to experience. Like, who says extremes are bad? As long as you're not, hurting yourself, obviously. But like, wow, you have this whole unique expression. Like, wow, if we look at the greats that we project all these admirable qualities onto, the greats were doing this stuff. That doesn't mean you have to be extremes to be great, but the point is that these people that we look up to, admire, and study pushed through what is considered normal, acceptable, and average, and lived who they are as this unique, weird self and expression. Unashamed of who they are.
And I mean, dude, I love this conversation because this, again, the traditional goal of psychotherapy is we want you to feel comfortable with whatever. We want you to, be comfortable in your own skin. And I'm saying the drive for intensity is because I'm fucking uncomfortable in this fucking place.
Right.
And the thing is, the more we resist that, the more we are averse to that subtle dukkha, the more it grows, and the more we're like, why can I not? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? From a certain lens, these are sacred wounds. We have been gifted these wounds intentionally on purpose because they shape us into unique creatures that have a unique thing to give. There's an analogy that I heard that's like, your wounds are like a pearl in a clam. It starts as an irritating grain of sand. It can be very irritating to have this wound, but over time you learn how to work with it and you layer it in that lacquer that turns it into one of the most beautiful naturally occurring objects on earth, the pearl. So that pearl, metaphorically speaking, came from your wound. And that is actually also your gift to the world, comes from that wound. It's this unique thing that you've been gifted to learn how to work with.
I think that in itself is a good way to look at what the potential of these intense fasts, and any other experience for that matter, like sweat lodges, whatever, psychedelics, spirit journeys, like soulcraft, nature expeditions, and 3-day fasts, and above that, there are opportunities to examine and reflect on your wounds and pearls, and like shed what is in you.
And I completely agree. I mean, to reflect, and also because what if I don't want to have this intensity in me my whole life?
Right.
Like, for right now, I'm like, I kind of like it, but I'm starting to get to this place where it's like, from an IFS lens, this is a part of me. IFS is internal family systems, which is another flavor of Western therapy. So from the IFS lens, there's a part that likes this intensity. And what if I gave this part space so it didn't take me over, blend with me, so that it wasn't calling the shots, then what would I do if I could give that part enough love and attention so that it didn't feel like it had to take me over? And that's an honest question. It's
you
like
know what that part is?
That part of me.
Do you know what role it plays?
It's a protector. It's a manager too. It's a. I would say it has something to do with. Again, it's like there's many words involved with this, but so it's like it's a manager that could be overachieving, sort of like drill sergeant-esque. I could make these one part, or I could make them multiple, but overachieving, drill sergeant, sort of related to anxious, not entirely. A part that wants to really live life. And like, and then there's exiles underneath this. That would be a fear of unlovability or missing out on life, or you know what I mean.
And this can go along with attachment style too. Like, not to psychoanalyze you in front of a camera.
No, I don't
like,
fuck
I'm the same way as well, but like typical of avoidance to avoidance attachment to want to be like hyper independent, perfectionistic, and like self-sufficient. And so, how else can we achieve this but to kind of prove that we are not vulnerable, prove that we can be invulnerable and not need anyone but ourselves through these extreme practices. And not to say there's anything wrong with that either. It's a gift because not everyone can do that, and knowing it is useful and interesting. And
I think I completely agree with that, and I have habitually been avoidant. I think that's actually changing though, which is nice. But yeah, and that, like, I remember probably in high school when I was like, life is hard. You can't really rely on anybody. A very avoidant thing to say. So I gotta figure out how to be strong. Take care of myself and be strong. And like I'm just afraid of being weak. You know what I mean? And it's like I don't want to get walked on. I don't want to back down from life. I want to see what I'm made of. And there's, again, we could relate this to depth archetypal psychology. We could relate this to IFS. We could relate this to Buddhism. And there's many different ways of seeing these things that turn into different experiences. And the question is, do we have the flexibility, mobility of mind to be able to try on these different ways of seeing at different times? You could try on all of those perspectives in one day and just be like, what did the depths of your being like? And that's the thing. From an emptiness perspective, there's no one way that it is. There's just different ways of seeing things that lead to different experiences. And when we have that freedom, then we get to actually choose, and we get to play a much more active role in the construction of our experience. And I also want to say, with any of these views, there is always 100% of the time there's going to be a pro and there's going to be a con. There's always a shadow to it. So if I just love myself no matter what, and I can just sit on the couch and watch Netflix and I'm just so happy all the time, I'm just content. But there's pros and cons. There are. What about being in the world and seeing what you can do? What about trying to make it a better place? What about you do you know what I mean? So so any of these views are going to be limited. There's no one view, one way of seeing, one way of being that is objectively better than any other.
And I think it comes down to, it's so useful to be able to look at any of them and all of them, and different ones will apply at different points in your life and just see what resonates at the time being for you as an individual. What feels most aligned with you right now for this moment?
Moment,
which one of these perspectives kind of clicks in a way that this fast could be useful for? I mean, if any.
I would say, for me, what really resonates and what feels like the opposite of that sterile therapeutic container is the depth psychology kind of lens, which is it's very different from dogmatic religion, where it's like there are, for instance, images popping in your head. You're not reading it out of a book. No one's telling you how it is. You're experiencing these images. Where did they come from? That's the question. Like, there's something very almost random about it, poetic, beautiful, artistic. And it feels like almost directly from source. Popping in your head, you're getting these feelings, these images of, not just in your head, in the world. These images are given to you, and you can work with them too. But it feels very rich and alive. And it's like, that I feel that's like, salt of the earth, heart beating, flowing with the stars. I'm not trying to put myself in a box. I'm not trying to end my suffering. I could do that. I could use that view. And sometimes I really need that view. Be like, what am I clinging to? Because this is actually too much dukkha right now. You know what I mean? And then it's like, oh, than traditional Buddhism. Great, this is really helpful at that point. You know what I mean? But then it's like, for me, the richness and the depth at this point comes from that soul purpose, meaning, task, and really tapping into that and not being afraid to do what the soul says. And obviously that's open to interpretation, but that's what feels good now. I also really love IFS because that's clearing out a lot of gunk.
Yeah.
Giving me perspective on it, but...
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's another way to use them both. There's this like neuroscientific principle, like one of the more up-to-date, I'd say, ideas in neuroscience and cognitive science is opponent processing. So kind of the way we think about left and right brain, and being a balanced person involves having a certain balanced approach of using each.
Yeah.
If you're too left brain, you're like too logical, you're out of touch with your emotional experience. If you're too right brain, then you're not maybe like thinking enough of the pros and cons, or logically approaching, rationally approaching life. And the same thing goes for so many other systems. One common example we all know is like sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system, of like the opponent processing. These are opposing forces that are acting as a system of checks and balances, so neither one is in the driver's seat all the time, and you have this middle path from a Buddhist perspective approach to life. It's so like, you know, you're never too aroused, you're not too like understimulated, you're this perfect amount that's always shifting one way or the other to meet the demands of life as need be. The same way we're talking about these systems and like a macro opponent processing is like, oh, IFS can look at the wound, and the acorn theory, like the archetypal psychology on the other hand, can look at the wound, IFS maybe looking at the past and what's led to this, and the acorn archetypal theory will look at the future and what's pointing forward. And these are opponent processing. Like, one, the past will keep me from being in like an unhealthy relationship with it, and the other, the acorn theory, might help me drive motivation rather than looking backwards too much. And having both will keep this thing in perfect balance.
Right. And again, like that dexterity to be able to oscillate is so necessary. We get in difficult situations when we contract, tighten, and solidify around, oh, this is the way to see things. This is the way things are. It's not. And anytime we think like that, we're putting ourselves in a box, we're putting reality in a box, and we're actually limiting our ability to adapt to like what is useful, what is necessary. Because sometimes, like, just from, let's say, the IFS lens, when I'm dealing with my trauma, my quote-unquote trauma, I'm solidifying it, I'm working at it from the level of self, really useful, but it needs to be balanced, because the question is there an end to that? The self is inherently fragile, actually non-existent, and you can never make it completely clear and happy, ever. So it's like, are we going to infinitely work at this idealized progression? And again, maybe from this IFS lens, is there an image of a final end? Or what's the goal here? So do I want to dwell forever in my trauma? Or from, again, seeing it as something to fix, where from the depth psychology lens or the Buddhist lens, it could be, oh, well, the self is made up. I mean, from the Buddhist lens, the self is more of a, image/felt sense, but it's not really there. From that lens, how does that affect suffering, trauma? It all starts to unravel from the root. I made a video on this today, but and then from the depth psychology lens, like, sometimes the soul, and when we say that, it is like the broadest sense of soul. It's nothing from the Christian religion. It's like the depths of your being, something trying to communicate to you. What does that want? And that has, maybe that goal is not to end suffering. It's not to heal my trauma. Maybe it's actually to live a mythopoetic story. And maybe that includes pain, suffering, confusion, maybe even things that could kill you. But there's a fulfillment that comes when we follow that mythopoetic narrative, and that can only be fulfilled by following that narrative. Right. This is a fire conversation.
Great, yeah.
I'm pretty rocked on ketosis right now, so I'm just flowing. This is nice.
Incredible.
Yeah, but yeah. What do you think, Jeremy? What view do you tend to gear towards nowadays?
Oof, I am truly in this personal process of exploring how they can all be in this right relationship with each other, constantly adjusting, like surfing, right? Like if you're on a wave, like you're not in one position. Otherwise, if you're just too still and rigid, you're gonna fall over and topple. You have to be able to like wiggle with the wave and work with it. And like this Taoist way of just being in flow with reality and the demands of it. So I'm really just truly messing around with all of them a lot right now. And
what have been your main ones recently?
Dude, like lenses and systems.
Yeah. You've been on a Vervaeke kick.
Yeah, really leaning into the cognitive science and philosophy of these systems, which I'll say is currently focusing on a Western Platonic, Neoplatonic approach to these things, but this is a little bit of a different vein from these other systems that we've been talking about. I'm really diving deep on relationship and dialogue rather than like personal systems of like IFS and Buddhism of like what works for like my own individual journey. I'm really diving into the study of community and relationships and dialogue
with self or world or both?
Both. The idea behind this is that through these authentic relating circling style practices that break down barriers between us, we're able to reciprocally open to each other. So like what Vervaeke will define as friendship or like an intimate relationship. And I don't mean intimate like sexual. I mean intimate like where you can fully be yourself and have like a real relationship with someone, actual relationship, not just like a buddy that you have a beer with and then you go about your day. This is only the case when both people are able to transcend themselves through each other, with each other.
I love it. I mean, the Buddha said the whole spiritual path is Sangha, spiritual friendship. I like that a lot, relationship. I think that's where we're both, again, we're both growing almost spontaneously in that direction at the same time. And big things are coming for sure.
Absolutely. And I'll say, having gotten to this point, the main practice for me has been more like the archetypal psychology lens, like that Verbaen style. I've been deeply following and reflecting on the image that I felt called, not wanted to, because wanted sounds like an ego. I felt like choiceless in like following this path.
The path that was, the image that was given to you.
And I'd say to keep me in check, as like the opponent processing, I've used like traditional Theravadan Buddhism
to be able to cope with that dukkha.
Right, because it will suck to take the hero's journey to get there. But those two things, like using the like individual personal liberation and the archetypal mythological, what is like my hero's journey in life, working together, have gotten me to this desire to study dialogue and relationship and community. And
I want to emphasize the fact that you're able to oscillate between that, again, depth psychology, archetypal pursuit, soul pursuit, and then the Buddhist Dharma. And when you're able to do that, you're loosening the reification to make real and the solidification of any one modality. You're not, again, falling for it head over heels and saying, this is objectively real and everyone else is wrong. But I also wanted to talk, so can you speak to the image you were holding and maybe how that image has shifted recently that's led you to this exploration into relationship?
Truly, I think my image, my kind of acorn image for most of my life until maybe a couple years ago, was this like this pursuit of truth seeking that was expressed through a need for self-mastery, which that's why we have that similarity of extremes, of just pushing myself to the limits to find my limit. Like what are my limits, and how can I use that strength to pursue truth? What is reality? Right? And so it's kind of like this image of the scholar warrior that was kind of guiding me. That word warrior always resonated with me. The thing that pulled me through, like, even though I've always been such a nerd, like such a geek my whole life, you know, like up late till 4 a.m. reading books type of stuff. But I've always been an athlete. Right? It's always been this scholar-athlete mix, which of course makes sense in this acorn image perspective that I'm now studying Plato and Socrates from this Western philosophy lens as my current system, because they were both soldiers and athletes who were philosophers.
Embodied.
Right.
Interesting.
So,
yeah.
And I didn't know that as a kid, you know, but it seems like I've been following this image to this point of that kind of Plato. Actually, hilarious. I just learned this year. Was Plato was his nickname.
I heard that in the podcast. I listened to it too.
Yeah, Plato was his nickname, and he was called that because it meant broad shoulders because he was a wrestler.
He's a big mofo, bro.
Big jacked, big brain guy.
Yeah,
and that's true. So that's been the image, and now I think my love and passion for John Vervaeke's work has shifted that image into a much more community, like Shambhala, paradise world oriented desire for like and of course that's an image for the world that's informed my image of myself being a member of this global community rather than just this individually, like, I don't know, well-read, learned, strong person.
You've
More like,
expanded.
now who is this person to others in my life?
And I'm curious, so we all have image of self, world, and other. So this metaphorical other. Has your image of other shifted also? Because how are you you know what I mean?
Say more.
So we have an image, again, like sort of an empty notion of who I am, what the world is, and who other people are. You know, what are they? What are this? It could be random people, it could be people you know, but what's your image of this other? Because for me, I can speak on it for myself. It's,
I would love to hear yours as well.
So for me, again, I'm with you. I was a heavy avoidant, very in a sense isolated, and that's, again, pros and cons. Served me greatly in self-development, but kept me from the richness and the fruit of deep interpersonal relationships.
Yeah.
Because of certain wounds. And at this point, I'm realizing, and from that spawns an image that is, other people, and this could be unconscious completely, can't be trusted, or if they knew me, they wouldn't like me, or I'm unlovable and I can't get that close, or they'll leave me and they'll be hurt again. All these sort of unconscious images start to flow out about other, and I'm just...
Right. These narratives, like schemas.
Yeah. And now it's shifted to where I feel much more confident in myself, especially my ability to be in community, and I want to... And the richness of it is unique, and again, the soul task is vast.
I love this relationship with self informing image of others because like ask me 10 years ago and you would be like hearing an answer that was littered with superiority inferiority complex, like I'm above these people because I'm on this pursuit. Actually that's coming from like an insecurity of like I feel below these people so I have to be above them. And now that I've come to more self-love, like I don't view people like that at all. It's not on a hierarchy. It's like I view, or at least I've been aspiring to, and I really felt that change in myself in the last few years, to view every person I come across as just two ways. One is like just another being who suffers and doesn't want to suffer, and just like, you know, from a dharmic perspective, and as this other beautiful, lovable form of consciousness that's here's my opportunity in meeting every person I meet to connect with another person worthy of love, and an opportunity for me to express love in a different way.
Yeah. And I mean, we could also relate it to projection, where it's like, okay, I project onto the other. You could say my shadow. This is like a depth psychology sort of view, where my shadow that is undealt with, maybe it's a lack of love for myself, is projected onto others. Like, oh, they wouldn't love me if, or oh, they can't be trusted because I'm not enough or whatever, and we project onto other, actually our unresolved parts of self. So again, these are just other great perspectives of, our relationship to other. And then, interestingly, by being in relationship, that seems like, I'm just coming to this right now, like almost unconsciously, part of the being is like, that's how you heal in relationship. At this point in your life, you've done enough solo. Now you want to go deeper, you got to be in relationship. And,
right.
And yeah,
there's no amount of personal development and looking at yourself can show you the other aspects of yourself that only appear in relationship.
Exactly.
So you're destined to hit a wall of growth and self-knowledge and therefore self-love in a vacuum.
Yeah. And then the thing is, do I want to, should I just transcend this feeling of discontentedness, of lack, of, I want to heal, but I'm good right now, actually. Do you know what I mean? Opening to that dukkha is a part of this infinite growth of stepping into the uncomfortable over and over again. And it's a beautiful thing. It's cool to watch the progression of us in the past 3 years in grad school, where we're going, the trajectory, and it's been a lot of healing, a lot of pain.
And, say that again.
Yeah, but we could end it now. I mean, seems like a good ender. We're flowing pretty well. I mean, let me think if I could just come up with something right now. No, I feel like this place.
Yeah, that's a good place to end.
It's a good place to end. Well, thank you for joining us. This is Jeremy Vera, soon to be pop psychologist. Catch him on the lecture circuit, selling his book. It's honestly, sooner rather than later. He already edits books for a living, unless that was confidential information.
Not at all. No, I wonder. Looking back at the conversation, I wonder how all the threads connect. We started with fasting and this spiritual journey of different ways of viewing ourselves and other, kind of evolved into this set of practices and what they mean for us, where our images are at.
Wow, that's a great question. Way to bring it all together. Someone had to do it. For me, it seems like we start with fasting. We go into soul, some sort of, why did I do this? What am I getting out of it? And we go to, for me, involving emptiness, depth psychology, different ways of seeing, as far as, this is honestly what my soul is trying to express. These modalities, the impact of them, what healing looks like, what growth looks like, as well as just being vulnerable and authentic and putting this shit on YouTube, because why not? So, that's almost what I see from it.
Yeah. It's just one unique expression in fasting of a way to check in, tap in, gain insight, clarity, and shed what doesn't belong, bring forth what does in your life. And it seems like a great place to pause and get back into a right relationship with yourself and the world, which is where this conversation ended up with. Because I when I did my fast, I felt very out of relationship with myself, and therefore, whether I knew it or not, out of relationship with the world. And it's interesting that that's what we ended up talking about today.
And it's a full moon.
Yeah, and the Cancer moon is a lot of relational, emotional content.
Interesting.
So there's that. Are we just slaves to the cosmos?
Bro, I'm cool with it. Honestly, we'll just bow down to the stars. Or maybe the Anunnaki come back and turn us back into slaves.
Yeah, I love that the conversation was a good mixture of these ideas and kind of us interviewing each other and like connecting what our personal life experience was to these ideas.
Exactly, I agree. It's got to be, I mean, the ideas are fun, but it's got to be pragmatic. And that's the thing with these ideas we play with. They're dope. They're fun to play with, but it's a game game changer when a rubber hits the road and you start applying them and seeing them in your experience, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is transformative and actually life changing for the better. But yeah, agreed. But
let's get this man some chicken.
Yeah, it's 3 days of no food. It's time to eat. Just so you know, I got some beets, purple sweet potatoes. Just cook some chicken in the oven. Gonna make some pesto pasta. Put some goat cheese in there. And just so you know. Thank you for joining. This is Jeremy Vera.